Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Music Theater Theory. Whoa! As you can see, I am not in my home studio. I'm in New York right now, so I'm at Piano Rehearsal Studios. Shout out, thank you, Piano, for letting me use your space. I'm going to record this video here. You can't see the piano, unfortunately, but that's okay. I'll tell you what I'm playing. And today, we are looking at Meadowlark. This was recommended by Megan over at Patreon. Hi, Megan. I finally got to it. I told you I would. Meadowlark is a very interesting song because it's from this musical, The Baker's Wife, which has music and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz, as we know if we are fans of Stephen Schwartz, which I am. And it's a weird show because it's like, it's been through, close to 50 years of development now. It's like they started writing it in like 1976, I think. But it's never really found its footing. It's never made it to Broadway. It's a weird show, but this song specifically is used so much in auditions and cabarets and stuff. Almost every Broadway star imaginable has a video of them singing this song somewhere. You, if you are a performer, have probably sung this song for auditions at some point. So why is this song so popular, even the show itself is, even though the show itself isn't? I don't know, but I think it has to do with the story that this song tells, and that's what we're going to look at today. It starts like this. When I was a girl, I had a favorite story. I guess we'll learn what that story was throughout the course of the song. Of a meadowlark who lived where the rivers wind. Her voice could match the angels in its glory, but she was blind. The lark was blind. An old king came and took her to his palace, where the walls were burnished bronze and golden braid, and he fed her fruit and nuts from an ivory chalice, and he prayed, sing for me. And then we go into the first chorus. So this verse is telling us all of the exposition that we need. There's a meadowlark. She's blind. And this old king is taking care of her. This parallels the story of the character. The character who sings this, Geneviève, is in a marriage that is very comfortable and stable, but not particularly passionate. And then this handsome young man, Dominique, comes along and inspires a passion in her that she's never felt before. And she's grappling with the decision of whether to leave her husband or not. And so she goes back to this story. It's a perfect example of a story song because a lot of the time in musical theater, when a character is telling a story, they're really telling a story about themselves through a metaphor. And as human beings, we do that all the time. We talk about ourselves in metaphor when we can't admit to ourselves yet that we are talking about ourselves. So here she's talking about this story about this meadowlark, but it's actually about her, obviously. One of the very interesting harmonic elements of this verse is that we get this A sharp a lot of the time. And that A sharp is borrowed from the Lydian mode, because we're in E major, so this. That's E major played with that A natural. If I make the A sharp, listen to how it sounds. That is E Lydian. And I talk a lot on the channel about how Lydian mode creates a dreamlike state in the listener's ear. And so by using this A sharp that's borrowed from the Lydian mode, it's taking us into Geneviève's reverie, her imagination. She's imagining the story. She's imagining how it impacts her current life. Then we get this chorus here. Sing for me, my meadowlark, sing for me of the silver morning, set me free, my meadowlark, which creates a dreamlike feeling in a different way. So we've got the Lydian mode in the verse, but then in the chorus, we've got what's called a pedal point. So you'll see here this low E is being played all by itself, and it's played in every single 2-bar phrase. And so that creates a solid bass around which the harmony shifts and changes, but because that E never changes, it helps us feel tethered to something. So when the chords are changing, they almost don't feel real because the bass isn't changing, so it helps this high tinkly piano part feel dreamlike. Because here that bass isn't changing. If the bass were to change with the right hand, like sing for me, my meadowlark, sing for me of the silver morning. See, there all I did was I changed the bass note, and it made it feel more real. The fact that there's this pedal point, the chord changes don't feel like they affect the bass, and so that helps them to feel like they are lifted above reality in a weird way. And I'll buy you a priceless jewel, a cloth of brocade and crewel, and I'll love you for life if you will sing for me. There we get a cool little D natural, which is borrowed from E minor, right? We've got E minor and E major. In E major we have a D sharp, and in E minor we have a D natural. So when we borrow from the D natural, it makes it a slightly darker sound than we expect. That ties into the lyric, I'll love you for life if you will sing for me. Maybe the fact that we get a note there that's borrowed from the minor key is a hint that the meadowlark doesn't want this king to love her for life, and she maybe doesn't reciprocate his feelings, much like Geneviève maybe doesn't harbor the same kind of passion for her husband as she harbors for Dominique. So, now we get this next verse about the god of the sun, who kind of represents Dominique in the story. It goes, then one day as the lark sang by the water, the god of the sun heard her in his flight, and her singing moved him so, he came and brought her the gift of sight. He gave her sight. One of the main differences musically between the first verse and the second verse is that in the first verse we get all of these held chords, right? Look at this. This is a whole note tied to a whole note. When I was a girl, I had a favorite story. There's very little movement in the piano part. When we get to the second verse, this 8th note movement continues from the chorus, which gives it momentum. It feels like the music itself is accelerating Geneviève towards a conclusion. In his flight, and he heard her singing the gift of sight. Also, here's an example of how she's singing about herself but can't admit it. The gift of sight. The meadowlark was blind, and then this sun god came and gave her the gift of sight. That represents the way that Geneviève feels like Dominique is showing her a world that she's never been able to see before. And it's such an apt metaphor, and the fact that the story within the song parallels the story that the character's going through so well is what makes the song so effective. And she opened her eyes to the shimmer and the splendor of this beautiful young god, so proud and strong. And he called to the voice in a called to the lark in a voice both rough and tender, come along, fly with me, my meadowlark, fly with me. So now, instead of sing for me, it's fly with me, but it's musically the same. So we have this chorus section, and because it's musically identical, the fact that the lyrics are changing catches our ear as an audience. If we had two completely different musical sections with two completely different sets of lyrics, we wouldn't notice anything out of the ordinary. But because the lyrics change, but the music stays the same, it helps us actively compare the new lyric to the old lyric. And when we actively compare the lyric, sing for me, to the lyric, fly with me, we get to kind of, in my opinion, the heart of the struggle here. The king in the story and Genevieve's husband in the character's world want the meadowlark, aka Genevieve, I don't know how to pronounce that name. The king wants the meadowlark to sing for him. The sun god wants the meadowlark to fly with him. Instead of wanting her to serve him in a way, he wants to serve her as well and be a partner with her. That shift in the lyric helps to explain why the meadowlark feels so much more compelled by the sun god, also known as why Genevieve feels so much more compelled by Dominique. Fly with me, my meadowlark, fly with me on the silver morning, past the sea where the dolphins bark. We will dance on the coral beaches, make a feast of the plums and peaches, just as far as your vision reaches. Fly with me. Here, I like the line just as far as your vision reaches because he's given her the gift of sight. Here, we go into a bridge section, so this is a new section of music that we haven't heard before, and it starts with this C sharp minor in the bass. So we go to this minor place that we haven't heard before. We've heard like one note borrowed from E minor, for example, but we haven't landed on this C sharp minor chord at the first bar of a new section. It takes us into a new harmonic world that is darker. But the meadowlark said no, for the old king loved her so. The fact that we're going into this minor musical place at the same time as the lyric, the meadowlark said no, that maybe gives us a hint as to how the meadowlark feels about making this decision. There may be some regret there. But the old king loved her so she couldn't bear to wound his pride. And the sun god flew away, and when the king came down that day, this is my favorite part of the song, he found his meadowlark had died. Every time I heard that part, I cried. And now, and we go back into the final verse. It's so interesting because it goes to this totally weird harmonic place that we haven't heard at all before. We've got an A sharp minor chord here, which is very odd. Two of the notes, A sharp and E sharp, just don't exist in the key signature, so we're going into a totally separate place. We have heard the chord B minor before. That is just the B chord, but instead of that D sharp, we have that borrowed D natural, borrowed from the minor scale, right? For this A sharp minor, we take that and we go down a semitone. So it's like the B minor chord, which already is borrowing from E minor, so it's like darker than we expect, and then it's lowered a semitone, so it's even darker than that. It's like the darkest sound that we hear in the entire song. And it's on the line, he found his meadowlark had died. Every time I heard that part, I cried. But then we go to this B major, which leads us into back to E major, which is where we were before, for the final verse. And now I stand here starry-eyed and stormy. She's gotten to the end of the story. The story that she's been told is that this meadowlark dies. It has a tragic ending, and she is trying to learn as much as she can from that story and change the way that she lives her life. So now she's finally ready to talk about herself. Not through the metaphor of this story from when she was a child, but through honest language about how she's actually feeling in this moment. Now I stand here, starry-eyed and stormy. Oh, just when I thought my heart was finally numb, a beautiful young man appears before me, singing, come, oh, won't you come, and what can I do if finally for the first time, the one I'm burning for returns the glow. If love has come at last, it's picked the worst time. Still I know I've got to go. Boom! We have this big decision being made here, and then this big glissando takes us into the final chorus. Fly away. The music totally cuts out here. We've got a quarter rest, which is 1 beat, a half rest, which is 2 beats, and then a quarter rest again, which is another single beat. So it's 4 beats total. It's a full bar's worth of total silence from the piano and the orchestra. And we just hear, over top of that silence, I've got to go. This whole story has been leading towards this decision that Geneviève has to make. And she has to grapple with the reality of making that decision. She has to get herself emotionally to a place where she's ready to make that decision. And through reliving this story of the meadowlark, she has gotten to that place. So the music cuts out so that we can just hear the lyric, which is the most important part, because it is the final decision. I've got to go. And then it takes us into this this final chorus. Here she says, fly away, meadowlark. She's singing to a meadowlark, but the meadowlark is herself. She's singing to herself. Fly away, meadowlark, she's telling herself. Fly away, meadowlark, fly away in the silver morning. If I stay, I'll grow to curse the dark. So here we've got musically, we've got these added triplets here, fly away, which allows the singer to take more time to really draw out and enjoy this melodic line here, and that represents the way that she is celebrating the decision that she's made. And then here she's justifying the decision, if I stay, I'll grow to curse the dark. So, it's off where the days won't bind me. I know I leave wounds behind me, but I won't let tomorrow find me. There's that D natural that's borrowed from the minor key again. What if tomorrow finds me back this way? That would not be very good, so we're borrowing from the minor key. Back this way. Before my past once again can blind me. Like, what is happening here? Oh my God. Totally different. A totally new musical idea. We've got these block chords in fortissimo, and the singer, before this, she's only ever gone up to a C sharp. That's the highest she's gone. Won't let tomorrow find me. But here she goes all the way up to a high E, which is 1, 2, 3 semitones higher. past once again can blind me. Then on the word blind, we get that D natural again, so borrowing from the minor key again. This big, sweeping, orchestral, like scale that ends on this hit, and then fly away. And then this very quiet, dreamlike music, which again uses that A sharp to create that feeling of dreamlikeness. And we won't wait to say goodbye. The other thing is, before, when we heard that A sharp in the piano, she wasn't singing the A sharp. The dream was out there, but she wasn't holding on to it. Now, that A sharp is in her melody. To say goodbye, she's taken ownership of that dream. She's taken ownership of that dreamy A sharp note as well. Then we get, my beautiful young man, and epic ending with these big block chords repeated instead of this flowing arpeggio sound. Now we have block chords, super powerful. She's ending on the B as well, the dominant note of the scale, ba-da-da-da-da, which makes it feel unfinished. It makes it feel like it's reaching towards the future, rather than if she went, and I, that would feel very final. But instead, and I, she's like reaching towards the future. And we've gone through this incredible journey. We've followed this full story about the Meadowlark, and we've seen how perfectly it applies to Genevieve's situation. And I think that is why this song is sung so much, is because it is just like a masterpiece of constructing story songs. The verse, the chorus, the verse, the chorus, the bridge, and then the verse and the chorus. The song form is perfectly constructed. And the story is such a perfect metaphor for the character. And that's how story songs like this work. That's how they're, that's why they're so effective. I hope you found this interesting. Sorry I'm, in this studio, but I thought it would be better to get a video out than none at all. And I will be back at my regular studio for my regularly scheduled Music Theater Theory videos next week. See you there on Music Theater Theory. Whoa! Peace out, y'all.